Hi, my name's Dr. Marc Reynolds, and I'm a voice teacher, performance coach, and stage director. Like you, I'm so glad it's Friday and that we get to go through some clips of different artists, analyze what we're seeing, and compare them back and forth. Today I'm going to do a little different. I'm going to be reacting to a compilation of K-pop idols' best and worst. It's going to be fast and furious. I'm going to be commenting really quickly in between each clip about the one thing that is really drawing my attention that I'm noticing. I'd love to hear what you're noticing, what you see, and what you think about what I'm noticing. Comment down below. Here we go. Is up where he's at, and what happened there? What was wrong with it? Well, he punched the top. In other words, he pressurized the bottom, didn't keep things nice and easy, and so when he hit the top, he punched it, which then bulged the vocal folds and made that airflow slow down, and then made it kind of choppy, and made the sound kind of There, what happened? He kept the airflow consistent. He didn't prep for that high note and really slow down the airflow, crunch, and punch it. He just kept that airflow nice and consistent. Instead of, right? Why didn't that work for her so well? She's collapsed here in the back. Instead of having 80% of a yawn with a smiling space, that soft palate was collapsed. The jaw was tight. It wasn't released. And that airflow was not consistent either. All those things are going to make it incredibly hard to sing. It's going to make it so you have to push and get forced. And it's going to create then vocal fatigue. And we're going to hear that all come out when we perform. So that's what was going on there. Again there, we can't really see very well what's going on, but we can hear what's going on with that airflow because it's nice and consistent again. They're not pushing at it. They're just keeping that air flowing nice, consistent, a little bit of air moving fast, which then results in an easier sound, an easier style of vocal production, and is a lot more pleasing on the ear. That's the big difference. Placement pulled back, airflow was not consistent, and she was really pushing at it. Result was we got a breathy kind of white noise sound that was disconnected and over pushy and forced and a little bit flat. You can see right there, she releases that jaw, the upper tooth smile comes out, that air stays nice and consistent. She opens up the resonant space in the oropharynx. Voila, we get this gorgeous, consistent sound. Starting to see a pattern here? Huh. That one, the video quality was awful. So was the audio quality. Can we really judge it based on that? I don't think so. So is that really one that we can call relevant and comment on hugely? No. Breath flow was consistent. Upper tooth smile, open resonant space, jaw draw. Again, there it is. Was that the best and better than the other one? Again, the audio quality of the first was but this one, very clearly a professional sounding voice. That was really clean, clear, and well done. Big difference between that worst and best, it was with the production value. The first one was not recorded as well and it wasn't as well produced. The second one was more music video-esque and much better produced. Can we really say a whole lot about the sound there? It's pretty tough when you have such a big difference in quality of production, both video and audio, to make a super accurate judgment of what's going on with the sound. Classic example, jaw was tight, it wasn't dropped, it wasn't released. Her soft palate was also dropped and she had almost no resonant space open in the back, which made it so she had to push harder to get the sound she's used to getting and made it harder to get the sound she needed to. So when she got to the point where she had to go up a little bit and sustain that note, it just wasn't in position to do it. Essentially, she had turned her acoustic guitar into an electric guitar that wasn't plugged in and trying to get the same sound, meaning she was having to push harder at the voice to get the same volume, but she wasn't able to sustain that as the pitch got higher. Okay. You'll notice that her jaw was a little more released. Was it super wide here in the front? No, it wasn't, but you did see that a little bit of release there in the back. Just those few millimeters can make a huge amount of difference. She was more open in the back. That said, she's right on that mic and really letting the mic do the work for her, so she wasn't trying to push at it at all. She was essentially, with our analogy before, using more or less an electric guitar without being super open, and meaning that she didn't have a whole lot of resonant space to work with. But again, since it was plugged in, she didn't have to pluck at those strings super hard, or she didn't have to have those vocal folds putting together really hard. And so she let the mic do the work. That's the big difference there. Biggest error there is he showed his mistake. He made it really clear to everyone that he just made a mistake. And that is the biggest giveaway. Do live people make mistakes all the time? Sure they do. But when they show the audience and tell the audience that, hey, look, I just made a mistake, it's a big ruiner. Don't do that. Kept the airflow consistent. Even went up that high note, he kept that airflow consistent. He didn't punch at it. He wasn't pushing at it. He kept the lower notes really easy and even under pressurized them just a little bit to allow him to transition up through those next higher notes without having to battle against the thicker vocal folds and the challenges that often come along if we over pressurize or over beef up the lower end when we're trying to go up to higher notes. Again, biggest mistake, she showed that she made a mistake. With that previous clip, they kept the airflow consistent. They didn't show that they made a mistake. They kept it all consistent altogether. Nice. Also helps that the production quality was significantly better than the first video. Soft palate collapsed, airflow not consistent, overpressurizing on the low notes so that he wasn't able to transition into the high, and he was also grabbing with his breath. Here, as he went up those high notes, he slid into that top note. even if we don't hear the slide, the musculature, what it felt like was a slide. He didn't disconnect there. He kept it nice and connected, kept the air flowing nice and consistent, and he didn't overpressurize the bottom. He just kept it nice and consistent all the way up through his range without putting too much pressure on the low and leaving himself somewhere to go as he went up to the top. He also released his jaw, kept that upper two smile there, kept the tongue up and out of the way, and in general was in really good shape. Difference between those two, worst and best, consistent airflow. What happened there on that worst? This space and back turn, she let it get corrupted by her O. Say O, feel that shape. Now say ah, feel that shape. When we're talking about pop and up in that area and that kind of quality that she's shooting for, from the molars back needs to be an ass shape. What she had was an O shape in the back. What we want instead is ass shape in the back with O lips around it. Ah-oh, not ah-oh. Hear how even with me talking, it gets muted as we go up top. It makes it a lot harder when we go up to those higher notes and trying to keep this pop style in place if we let this space in back shift its shape to an O. We don't want it shaped with an O. We want it shaped with an A in the back with O, tongue, and teeth and lips from the back molars forward. If we'll do that, all of a sudden we get a gorgeous sound. Let's see what happens here with the best. Okay, we don't really get to see what's going on there. That one was better with that back shape. It was still a little corrupted. There was still a little bit of O back in there, which actually made the pitch suffer a little bit. It was a little under pitch. Yeah! Worked really great for her, and she kept it nice and ah shape in the back. As she went to the top, which made it work, she had to be able to get that top note. And then as we came back down, went towards kind of an O again, which then made it sag a little bit. First thing I noticed between those two is the level of energy. They were much more committed in the second performance than they were in the first. There were some other vocal issues going on. One was, again, consistent airflow, resonant space in the back, and how hard they're pushing and how much they were letting the mic do the job or not. But in general, what was most noticeable to me was that in the first performance, it was kind of half-hearted, not fully committed. It looked like they were more just messing around, rather than in the second where they were really on it and 100% committed to what they were trying to communicate with the song and making their dance moves crisp, clean, sharp, and where they should have been, matching what they're doing with their voice and with the music. There, what happened, we get that big kind of break chunk in the voice, is they changed the balance of air quantity and velocity of air flow. Meaning what happened is all of a sudden they increased the volume of air, the amount of air coming out, but its speed decreased, which made the vocal folds go all haywire and not work like they should, because you changed up the whole game on them. And that's not going to work so well in the middle of a note, especially when you're going up to a high note. Instead, it would have worked a whole lot better. My guess is what happens here in this next group, again, is that they keep the airflow consistent. Let's see what happens. Yep, it's exactly what happened. Consistent airflow, they kept the feeling of stretch, they didn't disconnect and try to overpressurize and push. Just kept it nice, clean, consistent, and easy. It's the same pattern we're seeing all the way through these things. Kind of crazy, right? This is my first time watching it all the way through, and yet, here it is. 사랑해
사랑해 사랑해
I'll be honest there. What I'm hearing in that one is that I'm hearing fatigue, possible damage, and if nothing else, probably sick. I'm hearing inflamed vocal folds there is what I'm hearing. It's not a technique issue. It probably got that way because of the technique, or maybe not. Maybe she's just sick. But that's what I'm hearing there is inflamed vocal folds. Open resonant space with an ass shape, 80% of a yawn, where it's a space but shaped with that ass smile, consistent airflow, upper tooth smile, not grabbing with the breath, keeping the feeling of slide as we're going up to a high note, and not prepping for it or increasing pressure as we're going up, but just keeping it nice, even, and consistent. You getting bored of me saying these same things over and over? Whether or not you're getting bored with it, the pattern we're seeing here, I think, is what's really important and relevant because we're seeing it really consistently across the board as the top issues that whoever made this video of best and worst is hearing and that other people are reacting to as well as it being awful or great. But really, they're relatively subtle changes that anyone can make to their singing to make sound more professional and to make them sound right according to the style and according to ease of vocal production. Biggest difference there was placement for me. The second one kept that placement really nice and forward and pingy and bright and didn't shut down that space in back. The first person who was on the worst, it seemed to be more collapsed in the back and the placement pulled back a little bit, which also made it more difficult for him to get the sound that we heard in the second video. The shape here in the back was 80%, but as an That soft palate was collapsed, that tongue was a little pulled back, and consequently, it resulted in a little heavier sound. It made it harder for her to stay consistent in the sound she's making and to make that sound easy and bright and vocally appealing. Jaw dropped, open resonant space. That was more consistently an ah shape in back, say hat. Or if you want to think, a yawning smile. 80% of a yawn with a smile in back. Upper tooth smile came out, airflow consistent. I don't mean to imply here that these are the only issues at hand and the only things we need to solve and the only things that make it sound professional or not. But when I listen to these singers and the first thing that jumps out at me, the first thing that if I was to work with them that they'd need to be addressing to take the worst and make them sound like the best, it's these same issues over and over and over and over and over again. So the lesson here is if you're wanting to improve what you're doing vocally, start with these things. Start with improving these and getting these where they need to be. I think if you do, you'll see significant progress in a short amount of time. If you want a voice lesson, want a performance coaching and acting coaching, want me to come in and work with your band or with a group to help them improve what they're doing vocally or dramatically or with their stage presence, book a time with me at mrperformingartstudio.com. I'd love to work with you in person or online.